Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of How Grief is Impacting Your Clients. My name is Katie Bressler, and I am a transformative grief guide, licensed counselor, author of the book, The New Face of Grief, and creator of the Legacy Growth Certification Program, which teaches you how to use hidden grief as the greatest tool for your clients' growth. Today, I have with me Vanessa Smith. She is a mentor to mission-driven leaders in the world. Does that work? Healers, leaders, light workers in the world. And we're going to be talking about how hidden grief is showing up in her clients' lives. But first, Vanessa, please share with us a little more about yourself. What do you do? Who do you serve? And where do you do it?
Well, I'll start with the where, because that is the easiest and most obvious, which is online. So I work with clients globally, and I have them all over the planet, which is quite nice to experience. And what a little bit about me, I mean, really, I'm an energy guide. So I have a background in understanding the energetic undercurrents of what drives people forward, like what their vision, purpose, and mission is really about, what they're here on the planet to do. And so those that I focus on working with are the ones that are here to build a new paradigm, here to create change. So these are the transformational leaders, healers, teachers, messengers. And so our work together is really in supporting them manifesting the mission they're here to do.
Yeah, that's amazing. And what do you find that clients come to you seeking in working with you?
You know, oftentimes it starts off as the how-to, like they do feel a very big sense of mission, I have this big vision of what I want to create in the world. How do I best do that? And so they initially kind of think that they need a plan, and you do need structure and organization to be able to effectively create a mission in the world and create, bring your vision to life. But what they're really seeking is the clarity, the confidence, the inner build, right? You got to be very solid within yourself. And then you pair that with the outer build, because if you begin to create really anything you want to create in your life, but you're not solid within yourself, you're going to chase your tail for a while, right? And when you have a big vision, if you spend time being frustrated, it's just a drain on your energy. So we really work on that inner and outer build together.
Yeah, and I think something beautiful that you teach, Vanessa, is that map for what it is they're seeking is already internally in them.
Correct.
And once they ground themselves and learn how to work with what's going on outside in the collective, the map starts to show itself.
Yes, exactly.
And I think that's an amazing piece to the work, because it's not, often with mentors and guides and coaches, it's their system, their way, and, I think that's something similar about the two of us is it's already in you. We're here to just shine that bright light on it and cultivate it with you.
Which is such a relief, isn't it? It's like we're wired. Like the plan is embedded in the cells of your being. And so as you like really lean into that clarity that you're seeking, or that confidence that you're seeking, it naturally starts to emerge when you get into alignment with the truth of who you are and why you're here and what it is for you to do. And so beginning to remember that innate design is guiding you in every way every day is quite healing and empowering, I think.
What are some of the insecurities that you noticed over the last couple of years are coming up more and more for the people you're working with?
Well, I would say, go ahead. Did you have a question?
No.
I thought I heard you breathe. Okay.
No.
I would say there's a lot of insecurities coming up around money. Actually, a lot of questioning of how I do have this big vision. I know I'm here for a reason. I know I have a big mission, but how do I build what it is that I'm here to build when there's so many pieces shifting around financially in the larger collective? And then also for me personally, not me personally, but I'm being my client, would say, you know, how do I navigate this? How do I navigate this beyond the sort of mainstream narrative that's telling me I need to be freaked out right now, or beyond my business not hitting the goals that I think my business should be hitting, because all of my clients own healing businesses. How do I steady myself financially? And so I'm always going to look to the energy. I'm going to look to, you know, what it is that they can align with that is, you know, unshakable from an energetic perspective, so they don't feel so swayed around by the shifting circumstances. We were literally built to create the circumstances that change that financial landscape through the systems that we're creating. So
yeah,
I would say that is the big one, but this time is bringing up a lot of hidden grief around money, hidden grief around I would also say intimate relationships and communication, hidden grief around being received in the world by other people. Like, can I just speak about my vision without being judged, or will people understand what I'm saying? And so some old hidden unresolved grief can come up as people start activating their voices and their visions in the world.
Oh, completely. And I can speak to that, that is when you really start to stand in the message you know you're here to bring, it will rock you.
Yeah.
And you'll be tested. Is this really the message you want to bring? And so let's dive into hidden grief. So Vanessa, you've mentioned hidden grief. And if you're watching or listening to this, when we talk about hidden grief, obviously we're not talking about grief related to death or a major loss, though sometimes it is a major loss internally. We're talking about the way we thought life would or should go, or really stepping into who we know we're supposed to be and having to let go of those messages we've been told of how we should be or supposed to be in that sense. So it is really letting go of the woulds, the shoulds, the could'ves, and accepting how life is and finding the magic and the beauty in what that is. And so my first question to you, because you brought up what the hidden grief comes up for your clients, but I think there's a theme that's coming up right now in the world that whether you're a healer or not, or whether you work with healers or not, many are feeling this. And it's what I like to call the waiting room. It is I have this purpose. I have this message. I know I'm supposed to be there doing this, but there's this almost waiting, I call it also the cocoon. It's like there's this waiting room period that the hidden grief stays with, that's where it shows up. The insecurities, the false beliefs, the old messages. How do you help your clients through that waiting room or that cocoon of metamorphosis until it's really time to step up, step out?
Two pieces come to mind immediately. And the first one is to realize that the waiting room isn't a waiting room. It's actually part of a key important part of the process. And you're not behind the scenes. I think for those of us, at least those that I work with, that have such a connection to this very big vision and they know they're here to shift the paradigm, they're holding this standard of like, I am not there until I'm on a stage with 1,000 people in the audience, or until I hit that 7-figure mark, or until my methodology is, I have so many people certified under it, like they hold this very high standard, and anything up to that point feels like a waiting room. And it's not. I mean, it is on one perspective. I don't mean to, I think there's a lot of validity in holding it in that way and holding that feeling, because I think that feeling is very real. Like, come on, when is it my turn? Like, let's do it. I have energy behind this, and I feel empowered when I view myself in this big, expansive way. So I do feel like there's a waiting room quality to it, but what I have found to be very effective in guiding clients through that, the hidden grief that comes up for them while they're in that waiting room, is to reframe the idea that they're even in a waiting room to begin with, and to start to see and name the ways in which they're impacting people now on in the same way that they're wanting to impact people when they're on that bigger scale. And when you start to take note of exactly what you're doing right now, you're not only building that acknowledgement muscle not only gives you more of a sense of release and relax of where you're at in the journey, but it also makes you realize just how very important this phase of the build actually is. And it automatically, I want to say, it just makes you a little less attached to the grief. I think when you're like, oh, I'm in this waiting room, and then all these insecurities come up for you, and then you're like, oh, then you're dealing with all your grief, and it kind of snowballs, right? But as soon as you make one little shift and start to go, well, wait a minute, there is impact happening. This shift did take place. This is moving. Then you realize, oh, wait, I'm so attached to my perspective that things aren't moving, that it's actually anchoring in my grief even more. And so we get into this interesting internal battle with the grief. And so that's the second piece I wanted to share to speak to that. And that is to meet yourself where you are, to actually just have a conversation with yourself, whether it's through journaling, or there's a variety of different ways that you can do it, where you're being honest and transparent with whatever is coming up for you, and whatever stories or experiences that are connected with that, so you can actually have some healing and feel a sense of integration. So once you're on that stage, once you get to that higher level that you're so craving to experience, then you can receive it. I see people that aren't dealing with the hidden grief component, then they reach this pinnacle, this peak moment, and they're like, it didn't feel as good as I thought it would feel, or like they couldn't fully take it in because they didn't do the grief work. They didn't meet themselves where they were at, and they also didn't see the value of that period of time that they're in before they blew up to get that big vision manifested, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. This question comes up because yesterday I was working with a client, and this was her feedback is, I see the vision and and I'm like, I can taste it. And I said, I know this feeling. I understand this. And I told her, this is what I call kind of the waiting room. And what she found for her was some of the waiting room was because she was putting a lot of shoulds on herself. And it's when you start to ask, not necessarily the right questions, but when you just start to ask questions about that feeling in that space, you start to realize the insecurities that come up and the expectations you're putting on yourself because you believe maybe others have it, or that you should be at this level. And it allows you to actually move around in that room in a sense when you release a lot of that. And I think the more I work with clients who are specific to being in the healing world, the more I'm seeing that we lose our creative vibes when we attach, like you said, to that waiting. Oh, I'm stuck in the waiting room. I'm here and everything's coming up and it's snowballing. And by stepping away and saying, what does this waiting room look like? What is it about? What am I here to learn in this? All of a sudden that grief work becomes that growth work. And you can, you can think more clearly in it. Because that was, I always call it like this dense energy when you're sitting in that waiting room kind of thing. And how do you start to shift that energy? Just like grief, hidden grief is dense energy in us. How do we start to shift and move it? So I love what you're saying. no longer having an attachment so much to what this space is or this feeling is, because we've felt it before, and that's why we go back to the old hidden grief.
Yeah.
And then how can we heal that hidden grief? So when we hit those goals in our career, in our personal lives, in our purpose, have that relationship we finally want, whatever that might look like, we can feel it.
Yeah.
And not carry, I think of it as like suitcases, right? We want to like get on the airplane and it's like, well, but I want to carry all this with me. Like, no, you can't. But you also can't just throw it off. You really need to know it and put it away.
Yeah.
So I think that's powerful.
Can I add too, though,
Yeah.
that I think there's power in integrating? Like, I think when we think about grief, it has such an emotional charge to it. We're like, okay, let's work through it and then let it
Right.
get it out of our space, you know, like chuck that suitcase. But there's something really essential about knowing that you have the capacity to heal and integrate the experiences that are bringing up grief for you, and that you have the capacity to hold it all, that you are more than your grieving experiences, and they're very valid and important for you to go through, but that you want to add it as like this beautiful tapestry of the wholeness of who you are.
Yes.
And you know, speaking to the whole concept of the waiting room, I would also like to bring in the idea of being empowered and a creator. Like, if you want to continue to hold the you know, metaphor of the waiting room, to consider, like, not just what does it look like. Do you want to throw yourself a pity party there? Like, you can, like,
do it.
you know, like, let's decorate. I'll decorate with you. And like, do you want to invite all the versions of your younger self that really struggled with this particular part of your hidden grief? You know, they can join the party too. So really giving them the authority to, because I think sometimes when we think of healing, we think of I don't know, that it has to be heavy. And
Right.
and so, I mean, sometimes it does bring, you know, a lot of emotions, but sometimes it can be incredibly joyful and liberating and empowering. And I think returning someone to their own source of power is, like, facilitating that process is a really great way to transform the hidden grief that we carry with us. So it doesn't keep kind of sabotaging us as we're in that, you know, building of the vision in the world and reaching that pinnacle stage. We're not still harboring those pieces that really just want to be resolved and met with love and integrated.
Right. And I think there's two pieces to that. Is it's kind of like when you're raising a young child and you're like, oh, that's hard work, or oh, that's difficult. You are labeling things already.
Yeah.
And that is how grief has been labeled for us. That's why it feels so much heavier sometimes than it may actually be. So I love that you drew, like, you know, that conclusion of actually it can be quite joyful and freeing, and to feel something makes you really feel alive.
Yeah.
I think that piece is huge. And then the second thing is that, you know, as healers and light workers and leaders, if we're not healing our stuff,
Yeah.
my grandmother, English teacher, she'd be like, you stuff a turkey. It's sorry, grandma, things. If we're not healing our baggage, our history, in a sense, our generational things as well, then we're bringing that sometimes into sessions or bringing it into our marketing, or, you know, and it becomes something. I like to say, like, you know, we have scars on our bodies from the things we've gone through in life, right? They're not physically there, but emotionally, mentally, they're there. And you can be like, look at this scar, or you can just stand there with that scar and people can go, oh, wow, I see you've gone through life and I want to work with you. And so I think that's a big piece of why it's important to face our hidden grief as healers, as light workers, as leaders, you know, of what's coming next in the world.
Yeah, I agree completely with that. I mean, the kind of the whole point is to turn the wound into the wisdom, right? And you know, our stories are meant to be medicine for ourselves and for other people. And when we I mean, it really is a voice activation to be able to share your stories, and what you've gone through and how you alchemized it and who you are now. Like, those are important pieces because they'll resonate with the exact people that you're meant to be working with. And when you don't, it's, from an energetic perspective too, we're always going to attract our matches, always. And so when you don't choose to intentionally work on whatever is hidden for you, whatever hidden grief there is, guess who you're going to call in as a client. and
Yep.
and it's actually a testament to your own inner growth and journey that you go through when you start calling in new kinds of clients, and you're like, wow, this is a higher level conversation, or this is a different kind of conversation that we're having because I did my work. You know what I mean? We get great validation from the mirror. And
Yeah.
not just in this field of working with healers, but it acts in like any opportunity, any connection that we have in life, right?
Right.
And so whether it's with a new community that we're meeting or opportunities out in the world that are outside of working one-on-one with someone or with other clients, we're always bringing in our matches. And I think it's we're humanity is being invited into examining how do we show up in the world, and how can we do it in an energetically responsible way, a way of integrity, a way where we feel in alignment with our truth. And in order to know our truth, we need to meet our grief. We need to meet the aspects of ourselves that took us out of our truth, that we haven't yet integrated. And so I really feel like on a collective level, humanity is most certainly being asked to look at what they've been carrying around within them that has been holding them back, sabotaging them, creating health imbalances, which is why I really believe your work and specifically the work around hidden grief is so important right now, because people don't realize the level of impact that baggage is having.
Right. I try to draw out often the physical ailments we have
Yeah,
because of the emotional and mental things we're holding on to.
they're like,
I mean, you're having sleep problems, you're having digestion problems. Like, there's more than likely a message your body's trying to send you,
yeah,
and your mind is overriding it.
yes,
And it's because we don't feel safe in our bodies anymore.
yeah.
Yeah. And we don't feel safe to listen to that intuition. So, well, let me ask you this. What are you finding that fellow mentors and healers, even those who are kind of future healers, are lacking in education around hidden grief to be able to help their clients?
Well, I would say that there needs to be a baseline understanding of the nervous system, and like what your nervous system is, how you can reset it in some very simple ways, so you have the capacity to um, you know understand how to work with grief on a physiological level, so your body can feel more at ease. Because oftentimes if our body feels out of balance, we might reach for things that create more imbalance, versus the things that will actually help us. So I would say that is a really huge piece that anyone, I mean, I specifically work with healers, for the most part, but I'd say anybody in the transformational field, coaches, mentors, guides, there's such a wide range, right? But they need to have a baseline understanding of the nervous system. That, I would say, number one. Well, not really number one, but one of the main components. The next, I would say, having the emotional awareness of how grief is impacting you on a daily basis. Like they need to understand how, like looking at the language that's being used, looking at the stories that are being told, looking at how they're shaping their day, like all of these very basic ways in which we go through our day-to-day motions are very much influenced by what has not been resolved yet or healed or integrated. And so having an emotional awareness that a transformational facilitator can look at somebody else's day and go, oh, hold on a second. You know, I see that you're packing in, you know, 20 things into an hour. And do you have something around in there around not being able to complete like one task? Or let's unpack that a bit and see what you might be holding so we can free you to use your time in a more wise and resourceful way, right? And so having some emotional awareness of the connection between hidden grief and how people do their day-to-day life. I think that is also super important to have as a baseline foundation. There's more, and I could go on, but I want to honor your time and your questions that you have. But those are the top two things that come to mind.
I agree with you, and it's awareness and education, and that's, you know, that part of it goes back to what we were saying. Then you need to be doing your work. Yeah. Because once you know how to regulate your own nervous system and you understand how grief is impacting your day-to-day and your personality and your identity, then all of a sudden you know how to work with your clients.
Yes.
In that. So I think that's important. Thank you, Vanessa. So I've got two more questions. One is, how do people find you? And I know you know the last question, but how do people find you out in the online world?
You can find me at vasmith.com, and there's links to all of my social media from there.
Excellent. And my last question is, what's the funniest experience you've ever had working with clients?
Okay. Funniest experience I've ever had. Well, I don't know if I would call this the funniest, but I would say that seeing so many different clients see themselves in a more expanded way has been a creatively expanded way, right? So it's like when you tune in and get a sense of yourself outside of your, you know, maybe your human experience, and you're like, oh, I feel like I could be a bear, or I feel like a warrior from 1,000 years ago, or some of the creative expression of how they view themselves outside of being, you know, who they are as this human being, and then adding that into their reserve of the strength of who they are, and being able to tap that wisdom. I think I would call that more fun than funny, that some of the experiences that I've had, because as they share it with me, I can see it too. I see, you know, I could see that warrior, and I can see that bear, and I can see whatever. I'm like, yeah, own that, right? You know, I think when we get so attached to the physical experience and not know the depth or creativity of our own soul, it just makes for a more colorful experience of life.
I agree. And I love that. And I can imagine there are times where clients come to you with ideas that are like a little fantastical in a way that makes you laugh and enjoy that moment even more.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely. Well, very good. Well, thank you all for watching. If you're interested in working with your clients or even on yourself with hidden grief, check out the Legacy Growth Certification Program by going to katiebressler.com, clicking on certification, and finding out when the next registration process is. Thank you again, Vanessa, and I will see you all next week.